We have been blessed with another opportunity to come out and worship God. I pray what I say will be pleasing and acceptable in His sight. We have spent a couple lessons previously just talking about our desire for more wealth and chasing after something that we can't obtain. So today I would like us to look at it a little more in depth and talk about what if we gain the entirety of the wealth that is found within the world, and then we lose our soul. What then? We can see many people in the world that attempt this. Celebrities, politicians, or TV shows that feature their homes. Years ago, it used to be called Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. It's updated, and it used to be called Cribs on MTV. And they would go to just these elaborate homes that the celebrities have. One fella had an actual Starbucks in his house because he was so wealthy. Most of us will never attain that wealthy 1%, as they call them. But the government, when they tax me, I feel like I'm in the 1%, but we're not. And the vast majority of us will never see that kind of wealth. But sadly, many people will sell their soul for a whole lot less than that. I was listening to Dave Ramsey this past week, and he said, I didn't check it. I assume it would be true because because it was on the internet, so it had to be true, right? But he said that if you make 38,000 a year worldwide, you're in the 1%. All around the world, you think about that in some places where $38,000 would probably be what they could make in a lifetime. That's barely, I don't even know if that's truly above the poverty level in this country in what we make. So the amount is relative. It's what is inside of our heart that matters. We can sin and we can lose our soul over $5 the same as we can over $5 million or $5 trillion or whatever. We couldn't possibly amass every dime that is in this world, but we can lose our soul over a lot less. But look at the example and think of the emphasis that our world places on material possessions and wealth. We spend a lot of money that we don't have to impress people that we don't even know or like just because we want to fit in. Many people look down upon people who are poor like it's a crime. So, well, you don't have the latest of this, or you can't afford that. Well, why can't they do better? They should be able to do better, right? That's sometimes what we think when we look at somebody that doesn't have some. Maybe it's because they don't want it. Maybe because they don't want to go in debt for something. We don't need things to make us happy, but our society would tell us differently. Many TV shows and that look down upon people who don't have something. We don't go into the lifestyle, there's no Lifestyle of the Rich and Famous being filmed in my neighborhood. They're not worried about what kind of house we're living in. And we look down, you live in that neighborhood, you can do better than that. And as parents, we may push our children to go into a profession that would make them successful financially, and we ignore the spiritual upbringing and the needs that they have there. Turn over to Matthew chapter 16. Jesus talks about this in his teaching. Matthew chapter 16 and beginning in verse 24. Then Jesus said to his disciples, if anyone desires to come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever desires to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. For what profit is it to a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul? Or what will a man give in exchange for his soul? For the Son of Man will come in the glory of his Father and his angels, and then he will reward each according to his works. A lot could be taught from that passage right there about denying self, telling myself no, the wants that my physical flesh desires for, lust for. Say no, deny yourself. If you're going to be pleasing to God, everybody's not going to be pleasing to God because we're not going to be willing to say no to ourselves. And in verse 26 of the text, Jesus makes asks two important questions here, more of statements if we look at it. What if we gain the entire wealth of the world? That's not equal to the value of one soul. Think of how many souls have been in this world from the time of its creation until now. And he's saying that all of the wealth of the world combined is not worth one of them. And the second shows the value of our soul. Once it is lost, nothing can be exchanged for it. If it was lost, if it's found in a lost condition, and I had the wealth of the world, I would be willing to give all of it to save my soul. So what is this soul? I don't know why that's coming up like that. I guess it just ran. I spend very little time assembling the PowerPoint, so we may have all kinds of animations when the texts are coming in this morning. I don't know. But what is this soul? Many people live and hope, they better be hoping and praying that they don't have a soul, because the way that they live, their soul is in jeopardy. Well, what is our soul? Well, first off, we're made in God's image. That's the part of us that is made in God's image. And we're going to look at a few verses that will back that up in a minute. In Genesis chapter 1 and verse 26, Genesis chapter 1 and verse 26, from the very beginning, we, mankind, were made and fashioned in God's image. It's not the physical body. We are created after something. Genesis chapter 1 and verse 26, then God said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. Just how much better would our world be if this was the base fact that we all believed? That we didn't evolve from something, from some goo and pond scum that crawled out and kept growing into something. We didn't come from apes. We didn't come from this. We were created in the image of God. That's where my likeness comes from. Our existence is valuable because it's created after something, not because it morphed from one thing to the other. It has meaning. And the image is from God. It's not from something that we see on this earth. And we're here more than just to satisfy those fleshly desires, because God is a spirit. This is how I know that it's the spiritual side of me and not the flesh that's made after God's image, is because God is a spirit. John chapter 4 and verse 24. This is how we know what part is made in his image. I remember during COVID, there was some people that were screaming and yelling that it was against their religion to cover their faces with a mask because they were hiding the image of God. Now, the first thing I thought is, well, do you let your kids wear a mask at Halloween? That's covering the image of your face then, if that's what it's not the physical face, it's the spirit. Because God is a spirit. John chapter 4 and verse 24. God is a spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and in truth. Again, this is the basis of what our belief needs to be founded upon. It's a necessary truth for us. If we can't agree upon this, then the rest of it can just be tossed out. Because God is spirit. There is a God, number one. He is the cause and the creator of all things. He is eternal. As Psalms said, that he fills the heavens and the earth. He is an infinite spirit. He knows all. He sees all. He is every place at every time that he has been there. And God can only be pleased when he sees that which resembles himself. And that's our spirit being involved in worshiping him. That comes from within. That does not come from external factors that we see man has brought in to worship him, that we need to worship him. And Carl told me I should have 2 short lessons today because of the day it is. It's Super Bowl Sunday. So I'm working to get the PA set up so we can stream the game up here tonight. Oh, we'll have it on the big screen. I'm teasing. But a lot of congregations that's what they're doing during their worship today. Because they need that to be energized. No, God wants us to be energized because our worship comes from within us. We're moved to do that. We give it life, and it comes from inside of us, our spirit. That's what's needed. Another thing that we see from our text is that each of us have a soul. That's something that we all have. One person, one soul. It's only up to me to lose that soul. We're not like some people believe that we're reincarnated multiple times. And if you do it right, you'll improve. The next time you come back, you'll improve. If you do it wrong, well, you'll go back a lower level and you'll come back as something and have to work and learn and improve. And then the next time, maybe you'll get better. The scriptures just don't support that at all. And some believe if we do better or worse, well, that will determine where we are the next time that we come around. Find that in the scriptures. Find one verse that would support that. We can't. In Luke chapter 9 and verse 25, Jesus calls the soul of man himself. Our soul, that part of us that loves and hates and hopes and prays and believes and aspires and sins, can repent, and can only be lost or saved eternally. There's only one shot that we have. In Luke 9 and verse 25, for what profit is it if to be a man if he gains the whole world and is himself destroyed or lost? It's me. I have one life to get that right. It's up to us individually. Yes, there are things that influence us in this world. There are things that happen to us that may influence our decisions and we spent a couple weeks, I think it's a couple weeks back, talking about making wise decisions. And sometimes factors lead up to us making those decisions. But when it all gets boiled down to it, if I am lost, it is entirely up to me because I made those choices and those decisions. So what is the soul's value? Well, again, from verse 26, we see it's worth more than the entire wealth of the world. It's also worth more than the body. The soul is worth more than the body because it's everlasting. It's eternal. It's decaying. This body is decaying. The soul is eternal. In 2 Corinthians chapter 4 and verse 16, this tent, as Paul describes it, this physical body is aging every day more and more. The spiritual side of me is not aging at all. 1 Corinthians chapter 4 and verse 16, therefore, we do not lose heart, even though our outward man is perishing, yet the inward man is being renewed day by day. That outward man, yes, it's dying. It may seem like a morbid thought to say this, and probably one that wouldn't make us feel all warm and fuzzy inside when we think about it. But the moment that we are born, the moment that we enter this earth, we have started the dying process. Now, we can do things that would prolong that. Sometimes our genetic DNA makeup will help or hinder that as well. We can live right, we can exercise, we can eat healthier and inappropriate amounts. Jenny is really trying to do that to me now, and I'm getting very annoyed with it sometimes. Why are we having salmon? I don't want fish. I want, some kind of red. Well, it's healthier. So there are things that we can do that will help us live a better life while we're on this earth. But unless the Lord returns first, I'm sure this is not a newsflash to any of us, but none of us will escape death. No one gets out of this world alive. That's something that we all have to face. In 2 Corinthians, chapter 5 and verse 1, Paul describes this earthly house here as being the tent. For we know that if our earthly house, this tent, is destroyed, we have a building from God, a house not made with hands, eternal in the heaven. We spend all of our energy working on this earthly house, don't we? making sure we try to satisfy every desire that it has, every pleasure that it wants, and we ignore the part that's going to last forever. I want to please the physical, and in doing so, I'm going to ignore and do eternal harm to the spiritual. That's why the spirit's worth so much. And it's worth more than just one member of the body. In Matthew chapter 5 and beginning in verse 29, I don't think most of us would intentionally maim ourselves. If you do, there's something mentally wrong with you. Normally, if we're intentionally harming our body, we normally take a great deal of precautions to prevent something from happening to our body, to make sure that we're safe, to make sure we're not doing something that's reckless and dangerous. No one in their right mind goes out and tries to harm themselves. But Jesus says here in Matthew chapter 5 and verse 29, that if that's causing us to sin, it would be better to harm ourselves physically than to suffer spiritually. Matthew chapter 5, beginning in verse 29, if your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out and cast it from you, for it is more profitable for you that one of your members should perish than for your whole body to be cast into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and cast it from you. For it is more profitable for you that one of your members perish than for your whole body to be cast into hell. That's harsh, isn't it? It's better for one of your physical members to perish than for all of you to suffer eternally in hell. When people talk about the teachings of Jesus, and it's funny which ones they'll pull from, and this is what Jesus taught. They ignore all of his teachings about consequences and punishment of hell. You don't hear many of the people who are talking about him and what he taught. It's always about his great love for us. That's what the world in general wants to focus on. And he had great love. Clearly he did. But there's another side of his teaching that many want to ignore. And that is he spent a lot of time talking about hell and how terrible it was. Yes, everyone is invited to Jesus. If there was one statement that I liked from the Grammys, and there was probably only one, but the entertainer, the singer Jelly Roll made that statement about how Jesus, now I don't know his religious beliefs and I'm not endorsing anything he does, but how he saved him. And he says, Jesus is for everyone. And that's true. He is, but when we look at his invitation in Matthew chapter 11 and verse 28 beginning, we looked at that last week, it's conditional, isn't it? When we read it and we study it, yes, he invited all to come to him. He offers peace that the world cannot. But the conditions are that we have to learn from him. And we have to place his yoke upon us. We remove the yoke of sin, but we put his on us. There has never been a scripture that would say that we are invited to come to him and we can believe and do our own thing however we want. It's come to me and learn from me. Act like me. Be my disciples. Yes, if we don't learn from him and we don't place his yoke upon us, there will be eternal consequences for that. Now, the love that he showed was offering that to us. He didn't have to do that. That's how much love he had. He didn't have to die for us. We could have just paid the debt of sin ourselves, but he didn't. He offered that to us, but it is conditional. Our soul is immortal. In Psalms chapter 22 and verse 26, we looked at 2 Corinthians 4 and chapter 5 as well, about this earthly body decaying and the tent, the Bible heart, the soul, that will live forever. Shouldn't we be concerned about where it's going to live? Psalms chapter 22 and verse 26, the poor shall eat and be satisfied. Those who seek him will praise the Lord. let your heart live forever. Oh, in this physical world, we do as much as we can. If we know something's wrong with it, we try to get our heart fixed. We can't live without, we can't live long without a heart. The heart, spiritually, is those who have worshiped and obeyed God. That heart that the psalmist is talking about, the one that's going to live forever, those who worship and obey Him. Those hearts are not going to be faint or discouraged by the trials and temptations of life because we are looking towards Christ. Our joy and our praise for the Lord is based on something that's going to last longer than anything that's found in this world. Everything, think about this, everything in this world can be destroyed either by God or even by man in some cases. The Spirit cannot. Man cannot destroy the Spirit. Matthew chapter 10 and verse 28. No matter what man does to me, no matter how painful he makes it for me, he cannot take my most valuable possession. Now, if you're like us, we may have something locked up in our house. We have a couple little safes. A real criminal could probably break into both of them, but it would slow down a novice. It would be enough to hamper them at least. We keep things that are valuable locked up in that. We keep things that we don't want people to get to locked up in that. We probably put a lock on our car, don't we? We lock the doors of our car. Maybe have an alarm system on it that really annoys our neighbors when it goes off for no reason in the middle of the night. And the owner of the car sleeps right through it, but it wakes everybody else up. We want to keep things that are valuable safe. Well, the most valuable possession I have, the thing that I would trade for everything in this world, is my soul. And man can't do anything to that. Matthew chapter 10 and verse 28, do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul, but rather fear him who is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. Man can cause tremendous pain physically to us on this earth. They can hurt this body to the point of killing it, to where it no longer exists. The tent is destroyed, like the snow did to the pergola that we had over our hot tub. It destroyed that tent. Stupid snow. But the weight of it was too much, and that tent had been decaying for a while. It had several years on it. It was becoming very brittle and dry rotted, and it destroyed it. Our physical body is decaying. It's temporary. Man can destroy it, but they cannot do one thing to hurt my spirit. God, on the other hand, has the power to destroy both. And the destruction of the soul, the part of me that will last forever, the destruction of that soul is going to be so much worse than anything that man can do to this body. Because what happens to this body? Well, let's just say that somebody decides that they're going to try to hurt me or kill me. The pain is going to stop physically the moment that I die. Well, with God, if He's going to destroy my soul in hell for disobedience, when I die, it's just getting started. And it's going to last forever and ever. No, it's not going to kill me and put an end to the misery. The misery is going to keep going on forever and ever and ever. And we think of all the things that we do to keep our physical body safe and our physical possessions safe, and we'll spend money to keep this physical body operating, and we should not ignore things like that. We should not be lax in our safety. That's part of being a good steward of what we have. But where should our attention really be? On the physical or on the spiritual? Because one day, our soul is going to return to God. Ecclesiastes chapter 12 and verse 7. This verse here puts an end to every ghost story that we've ever heard, and all the unexplained phenomena could be put to rest in one verse. Because in Ecclesiastes 12 and verse 7, the wise man says, then the dust will return to the earth as it was, and the spirit will return to God who gave it. That is the separation between the two, the physical and the spiritual. The physical goes back to the ground where it came from. The spirit goes back to God where it came from. And at the end, the grave or urn or wherever this physical body ends up is relatively the same size for everyone. Whether we've had large amounts of wealth or just barely enough to survive. What we really need to worry about is what's going to happen to that soul when it returns back to God. Because he, as we looked in Matthew chapter 10 and verse 28, he is the one that has the power to destroy it. And we're told that our soul is going to go in one of two places when we die. It's said many times, Matthew chapter 25 being one of the best places that we can look at. And when we're looking at account of the day of judgment and the division between the left and the right, the good and the evil, they're sentenced to one of two places. There's no middle ground. There's no gray area. There's no lesser spot in hell or a lesser spot in heaven where the okay people go. They're not really good, but they're not bad enough to be in hell, so we'll put them off in a corner someplace. There's no poor neighborhood in hell. It's all this, or in heaven, it's all the same. In Matthew chapter 25, we've seen verse 34, verse 41, and verse 46. We will be on one of the two sides, the right or the left. In verse 25, chapter 25 and verse 34, then the king will say to those on his right hand, come, you blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. That's the one that I want to be on. That's the side that I want my soul on. Blessed, come in here to this kingdom. That's one location to be sent to. The second is in verse 41. Then he will say to those on the left hand, depart from me, you cursed, into the everlasting fire prepared for the devil and his angels. That's the side I don't want to be on. Not everyone is on the right side. Matthew chapter 7 talks about that. And not everyone is going to inherit those joys that are found in heaven. That's the opposite of what the world tells us. Everyone's in heaven, right? Maybe Hitler and Mussolini or some terrible people like that, but everyone else is in heaven. And as I was studying this lesson yesterday, looking at Matthew chapter 7, is it ironic or is it a mistake that when Jesus talks about that what we refer to as the golden rule is the verse before that in Matthew chapter 7 and verse 12? That how we treat others and how we're to care and treat them as we want to be treated. And then immediately he goes down and say, not everyone's going to find the right way. It's probably not an accident, is it? And verse 46 of Matthew chapter 25. And these, talking about the ones on the left, will go away into everlasting punishment, but the righteous into eternal life. So how much energy should we spend and how much effort should we place on where our soul spends eternity? Do we take that matter seriously, or do we let it slide to the back burner while we focus on what's in front of us right now, the physical? We'll get around to that later. We can take care of that. I can do that tomorrow. I've got a lot of things on my list that I can do tomorrow. I've got things on my list from years ago. I'll take care of that later when I have time. Well, I've never had time because I've never wanted to really and truthfully make the time. That's why we still have that flooring that we bought 6 years ago. Still sitting in the garage where I put it. I'll get to it at some point in time. I'll take care of my soul when I get all these other things taken care of. Then we'll worry about that. How important is that soul? What are some of the faculties of this soul? What it's often referred to as the Bible heart. The soul has a purpose. What is its purpose? Why do I have this thing that is so valuable, that's worth so much, that its eternal home is up to me and so important? Why have I been given that? Well, it's what makes us us. It gives us the power to think. Proverbs chapter 23 and verse 7. Want to know where all this evil comes from in this world? And the good? Well, it comes from the heart, from our soul. Proverbs 23 and verse 7, for as he thinks in his heart, so is he. Eat and drink, he says to you, but his heart is not with you. We think on it. We dwell on it. It becomes our actions because it was in our thoughts first. It can't become our actions if it doesn't start in our mind. It begins in our soul. And here in Proverbs, we have an example of a person, we would probably call them a backstabber, wouldn't we? They're a hypocrite. They're a fake friend. This person here, who he says he's with us, but his heart's not. In reality, he is not with us. We don't want that kind of a friend, do we? We could do a whole series of lessons on our soul and the diet that we feed it. But if we're continually feeding it with garbage, then should we be surprised when garbage comes out of it? Because that's where our power to reason comes from, is within our heart, in our soul. In the Bible, it often refers to the soul as the heart of us. Mark chapter 2, beginning in verse 6, where does all this reasoning that we are going to look at here start? It came from their heart. We see both good and bad, and it comes from the heart. Mark chapter 2 and verse 6, and some of the scribes were sitting there and reasoning in their hearts, why did this man speak blasphemies like this? Who can forgive sins but God alone? But immediately when Jesus perceived in his spirit that they reasoned thus within themselves, he said to them, why do you reason about these things in your hearts? The scribes and the Pharisees did not like many of the teachings of Jesus. They didn't want to hear what he had to say, mainly because it stepped on their toes and it exposed their hypocrisy. Does that sound familiar to today? We don't like the truth because it tells us something that we don't want to hear. Where did this problem begin? It began in their hearts. And when it comes to soul and money and our greed and desire to have it, the amount is irrelevant. It's the feelings and the thoughts that are in our hearts over it. Because what's wealthy here is not wealthy in, say, a place like Dubai. And what's poor here is wealthy in a place like maybe the Philippines or some of the other third world countries. Our poorest people are wealthier than some of their richest. It's not a matter of amount, it's a matter of what's in our heart. From our soul, we also get the power to love. Matthew chapter 22 and verse 37. The meaning of this here is that we must love God with all of our faculties, all of our powers, everything that we can have within us. Matthew chapter 22 and verse 37, Jesus said to him, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. Who was he talking to? Well, he was talking to someone that was putting his material wealth above his service to God. What's the greatest commandment? Well, first off, you love the Lord your God with all of your power, with all of your being. We must love him supremely, more than any other thing on this earth, people or things, with all the dedication that we can possibly have. To love him with our heart, to fix our attention supremely upon him, more stronger than anything else. And as he told the rich young ruler here, we must be willing to give up all that to serve him and hold his commandments to our hearts, hold his commandments dear to us. We place him first, and we wouldn't do anything. We won't make any decision that's going to interfere with that. But note where all this starts. It starts in our heart. We love him with all of us. We don't keep anything back from him. But with all of our soul, with our life. That means that we would be willing, if called upon, to give up our very physical life for him in devotion to his service. Sadly, how many Well, we see people having to do this in some parts of the world. They do have to give up their life because of their service to the Lord. But sadly, we see many people who will give up their service to the Lord for far less than their life. We probably in our lifetimes, it may happen in some, but we're probably in this country especially, we're not going to be called upon to give up our life because of our faith in God. It may happen, but I would say probably not, at least not in the super near future. But what if we were? Would our faith be strong enough to say, yes, I'm willing to die because of my faith in God? If I love God the way that I'm supposed to, then yes, I would. And that comes from within my spirit. Also, the power to purpose. We looked at this in a lesson a few weeks ago about our giving in 2 Corinthians chapter 9 and verse 7. It's something that we consciously think about, especially with our giving, but with all of our service to God, not only in our worship service, but in serving Him outside of here. But we purpose in our heart, whether that's our giving on the first day of the week, the planning of it, the coming together, it starts from our heart. 2 Corinthians 9 and verse 7, so let each one give as he purposes in his heart, not grudgingly or of necessity, for God loves a cheerful giver. And as we discussed a few weeks ago, whether or not I set something aside ahead of time, or whether or not I pull whatever change I have in my pocket and with the lint as I walk through the door and I toss it in the collection plate. You know what I've done? I've purposed both of those actions in my heart ahead of time. I've done exactly that. I have planned. And my lack of planning is a plan. Just to walk in and drop something in, that's what I purposed in my heart. What's that saying about it? And we know that this physical heart, that what we're talking about, is not coming from our physical heart, from the organ in our body that pumps the blood. It's the figurative heart, the Bible heart, our spirit. This is a good spot to stop. Hopefully we will have a shorter lesson tonight so we can get to the game quicker. No, I'm teasing. Don't care about that, but a good spot to stop. We're going to look more at what our spirit is, and then we're going to look at what we would gain if we actually were able to gain all of the wealth in the world. And then we'll look at what we would lose if we gained all of the wealth in the world. So if you're subject to the Lord's invitation in any way, take this time to think about the condition of your soul. And if there's changes that need to be made, let's take care of that now while we have the opportunity. Every week, I don't have trouble finding an example to think about and to show the frailty and how quickly life can change. When I come every week, there's something new to think about how fast this life can change for us. A friend of mine, you probably saw him on the news. I went to high school with him. His name was Mike Farthing. He went on just a regular call to a car that was on fire, and he ended up getting stabbed in the back. Now, thankfully, he is going to recover, but I would say that if someone had talked to him the morning that he started his shift at the sheriff's office, that if they said, are you planning on getting stabbed in the back today with a 10-inch butcher knife from a guy that set his girlfriend's car on fire? You think he'd have said, oh yeah, that's exactly how my day is going to go. Nope. We have things come up all the time that change our life quickly. So if we're not prepared, what are we risking? Well, we've looked at what we're risking. We're risking our soul. And if that soul is not right with God, there's going to come a time when it's going to be too late to make those corrections. So if you're subject to the Lord's invitation in any way, take this time to make them now while we have the opportunity as we stand and sing.